I just want to take a look at the name of my presentation, Energy Crossroads, Exploring North Carolina's Two Energy Futures, channeling our inner Michael Schellenberger works. I did that for Steve Malloy. He's a huge fan. So first of all, thanks for everybody being here. And I want to say it's a little bit like having the band back together. You know, I get to hang out with some of the smartest people I know, and I'll warn you, I'm not a scientist and I'm not an engineer. My expertise really lies in the politics of energy policy. And so North Carolina, like my former state, Colorado, by the way, my husband is State Senator John Cooke, he's here too, so Colorado is still represented here in the room, also by Ramey Johnson back there as well from Lakewood, Colorado. But I learned, I have a lot of battle scars from Colorado, and learned a lot about how you lose policy battles. Because I'm pretty sure we didn't win one. We put up a good fight, we fought in a whole bunch of different arenas, but we didn't win, ever. And you can, you look at Colorado, which has got this 100% renewable mandate, or I don't know if it might be a goal, but let's just say that Colorado is on the crazy side of energy policy, and we never won. So when I got to the Locke Foundation and heard about what the governor of North Carolina was doing, we have a Democrat governor, Roy Cooper. We have a Republican-controlled state legislature. And when I heard about what he was doing, we were going to take a different tactic. So our governor, Governor Roy Cooper, and the Department of Environmental Quality drafted the Clean Energy Plan, which essentially calls for, and you can see the bullet point, 70% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2030 and carbon neutral by 2050. And for some of you in this room, that's going to sound familiar, or you're probably going, God, I wish my governor would only call for that. So our state's largest energy producer or electricity producer is we're a state with a regulated electricity industry. And so Duke Energy, largest energy producer, I have battle scars from battling Xcel Energy over these very same things. But Duke Energy came up with its response to it. And they presented several different portfolios that, as a way to achieve this goal. But the one, obviously, that the governor and the environmental left, so the activist left, wanted, this will sound familiar to a lot, wind turbines, solar panels, and batteries. Now, North Carolina's on the coast, and so one of the places they wanted to put it was it's offshore wind. Now there's stupid and then there's offshore wind stupid. Offshore wind is one of the most expensive. I guess to some extent, I'm just done even having that debate anymore. Like, if you actually think offshore wind works, then ask yourself why the Navy doesn't power its entire fleet with wind turbines. And solar panels and battery backups. So what the John Locke Foundation did is we weren't going to argue the policy goal, which is they want to be carbon neutral by 2050. Fine. Okay, if that's where you're going, we're going to show you the best way to get there. And it isn't wind, solar, and battery backups. It just isn't. So we commissioned a study, and we got the Center for the American Experiment did all the economic modeling for us, and then we got Jordan McGillis from the Institute for Energy Research to write it. And it isn't a study, I will say this, it's a book where we analyzed Duke's portfolio, the preferred portfolio against nuclear. But here are just a couple of quick North Carolina energy facts, just so you sort of know where we are. We're the 6th highest state for nuclear power, and about 5% of the US total. 2nd highest installed solar power capacity and actual generation. Now, part of that is because, it isn't because North Carolina's sunny all the time, I can tell you that. It's because there are lucrative tax incentives for solar installation. And it doesn't generate, let's put it this way, it isn't what is contributing to North Carolina's overall reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. I won't read all of these to you, but I mean, you can see. Probably one of the most important is the drop in greenhouse gas emissions that we've had. And like I said, it has nothing to do with solar panels. It has everything to do with North Carolina's nuclear fleet and with also new power plants being natural gas. These are a few more facts. According, you can look at North Carolina is among the nation's leaders in decoupling emissions from economic performance. Again, this gets to the fact that we have reliable clean power, meaning nuclear, meaning natural gas. It doesn't mean wind turbines and solar panels and batteries that don't work yet. But we have achieved lower emissions while still seeing strong economic growth. And then I threw just a couple of other things in there so you would see where we are in kilowatt, how much we pay per kilowatt hour. And residential is 11.13, commercial are 9.02 cents. So you just get kind of an idea of where we are. Now, we're the only state in our region, in the Southeast region, that actually has a renewable mandate, and it's 12.5%. Others have goals, but they don't have a mandate. Ours is a mandate, and it's been achieved, and and there's a whole bunch of, I didn't put the actual sources that it all comes from. You guys probably know what they are. I mean, there's a biogas, but it's predominantly solar. There's wind, and then there's like hydroelectric, small-scale hydro. So our governor then, after all of this, he actually put out an executive order because the clean energy plan wasn't enough. Now we have an executive order. Reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and this is the one that I think is hilarious. Increase the number of zero-emission vehicles to at least 80,000 by 2025. Now, we currently have 16,000. I'm laughing at that because I'm going, what do you think that's going to do to the power grid in the next few years? And if you have, a friend of mine who has an electric vehicle, got his bill from Xcel Energy, he lives in Colorado. And he got, the energy shaming they do where they try and show you, oh my gosh, here you are compared to your neighbor. Consider turning off the refrigerator you have in your garage. And you get kind of creeped out going, how do they know I have a refrigerator in my garage? Like, who's here looking at that? Well, he got energy shamed because it said, you're using 126% more electricity than your neighbors. I said, what are you doing? Are you running a grow operation? He said, no, it's his electric vehicle. I said, oh my gosh, what is that going to do to the energy shaming business? We're going to energy shame you for plugging in your electric vehicle. So anyway, they developed, the Department of Environmental Quality came up with this clean energy plan. And, the same old words, foster and encourage the utilization of clean energy sources. And I love this, a modern and resilient grid. How did wind and solar make the grid in Texas resilient? Anyway, you can see what the main goals are, 70% by 2030, carbon neutral by 2050. Portfolio D is the one we actually modeled in our book. But here's the thing that is really interesting. This is why, I look at this and I go, we should not even be having conversations about utility scale wind and solar and batteries. Like, look at this. So here is, if you look at what the capacity mix would be, so nuclear would be 11%, but it's going to be responsible for, and I don't have 33% of the generation. Now, if you see that kind of efficiency, don't you go, you know what, I think I'm going to go more nuclear. It kind of works. But no, we're going to go all in on wind and solar, which here's what we found. That's the cost. Let me go to the one where, here it is. Wind, solar, and storage would account for 53% of the cost, but it would never account for more than 40% of the electricity generation. I mean, it's crazy. Let me see if I can go back. Because I do want to, here's the cost too. It's going to cost $100 billion. $411 based on the baseline between 2020 and 2031. And then $1,700 for commercial. And then it increases, $522 increase. And then commercial customers, it's going to go up, $2,165. I mean, it makes no sense. The rate, and then rate increase here. Industrial customers, you're just screwed. Look at that. The cost between 2032 and 2051, if we were to continue down this path with wind, solar, and batteries, which, by the way, is where the governor wants to go. He is a full-throated supporter of Joe Biden and this. He's not going to come out loud and say, yeah, I'm all on board for the Green New Deal, but he's darn close. Just so you guys know, North Carolina is a purple state trending red, whereas when I was in Colorado, purple state trending blue, and now full blue. In fact, I call it progressive left green. So that's what we talked about before. Anyway, so what we did is we decided we would present an alternative scenario that no one had presented. Duke hadn't presented it. The governor sure wasn't interested in it. He didn't talk at all about nuclear. So we said you could do it. You could get your policy goals. Again, we're not arguing the policy goal. That's, that to some extent the horses are out of the barn on that. And who knows what 2050 will look like. But the point being, we weren't going to argue that. We're going to argue how you get there. And this was, so you had 70%, we could reduce emissions by 70%, but do it for 30% cheaper if you just do it with nuclear. And then the land use problems, we did a whole section on this on land. If you look at the efficiency of nuclear power versus wind and solar when it comes to land use, again, I don't even know why we have this debate. Why on earth are we even talking about utility scale wind and solar and batteries? I'm sorry, I just can't take anybody seriously anymore who says that they want lower emissions, and then they start talking about affordable and reliable, and they say we're going to do it with wind, solar, and batteries. No, I'm not taking you seriously, because you obviously don't actually care about carbon emissions, and you actually don't care about affordable, reliable power. Other problems, rare earth minerals, we all know that. Let's shackle ourselves to China. Yeah, that's a great way to power our grid. The additional transmission lines, and then there's being Texas and California. For those of you who are from Texas, I'm sorry for what you all went through this winter. I really do. My hearts go out to you. My daughter was living down there. But for folks like us who went, see, that's what can happen. And California, with rolling brownouts and blackouts, let me put it this way. The people who are going to be okay in all of this are people who can afford their own energy or electricity backup. If by 2050, if we're all wind, solar, and batteries, the people who will have power are the people who can afford it, and low income will be out of luck. So the future, there was some fuel switching legislation, and it was Duke's fuel switching legislation. And we just presented this book, and Senator Newton from North Carolina cited this book on the floor of the Senate when he said, well, let's put it this way, Duke's, the 50-page fuel switching bill got pulled and got replaced with something that said, all right, if you're gonna go to zero carbon, it has to be the most reliable and it has to be the most affordable. It has to be a least cost principle. So just channeling this idea of nuclear power, we're not challenging the policy goal. Fine, if you guys want to do it, but don't be stupid about doing it. The other thing is, like I said, nuclear, those of you who have known me a long time, listen, I'm all in on microgrids, and I think at some point we are actually going to have to look at, I'm not going to call it deregulation. I would call it the ability to power your own home. And Colorado, the one thing we did win there when I was there, it was called the right to store. And it was a bill that allowed people to store electricity in batteries behind the meter. So in other words, a regulated monopoly couldn't come in and look at how you were storing your power or would have any control over it. I likened it to, if you go to the grocery store, buy a case of water, and you put it in your garage, the grocery store has no right to see what you're gonna do with the water. You can pour it down the drain if you want, you can drink it if you want, you can do whatever you want with it. But you've already paid for it, so they have no right to tell you how you can and can't use it. This was the idea that you could take your batteries, you could charge them at night when the cost is lower, and pull yourself off the grid when the price is high at, say, in the middle of July when it's 100 degrees and it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So, and that sort of leads us to this idea of microgrids. And I'm one of those people who I hope by 2050, we aren't talking about regulated monopolies. I hope we're talking about each of us with the ability to produce our own electricity in our own homes, and I'll be the first one to buy the mini nuclear reactor that sits right in my basement. So thanks, everybody. I appreciate it.